So everybody on the internet's going crazy over making no-knead bread and just making bread in general during the quarantine. And I'd done it, I think, once before, and it turned out okay, but it wasn't like anything to write home about. So I'm just getting together my ingredients now. The whole point of no-knead bread is that it's like super easy to do and then just leave. So let's try. So most of the recipes that I do are use regular yeast, active yeast. This one is instant yeast. And I realized that I knew I had this for a long time, but the expiration date was last December. So I'm gonna see if I can use this. It's honestly super surprising to me that this recipe only requires 1/4 teaspoon. I looked up the recipe again and it did say 1/4 teaspoon, so I'm just going with that. I have some small measure of water here. I'm gonna put that in there, and then I'm gonna do a pinch of sugar, and we'll leave this for 15 minutes, 10-15 minutes, and see if it gets any bubbly. So assuming that the yeast will work out in the end somehow, I am going to prepare the liquids that we need. For some reason the recipe has this measured in grams, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. We're gonna do, let me see here, got my notebook. Okay, we're gonna do 15 grams distilled white vinegar. That's this guy. Oh, that's too much. Let's try that again. So I totally measured 15 grams perfectly into the container. And now we're going to zero it out again. And then do 85 grams of beer. 85. Go slow. You can't take this back. Oh, well, close enough. Okay, 198 grams. Close enough. I think the yeast is probably dead. It's like foamed up some, but not the same kind of like bubbles on top. I'm assuming that instant yeast would do the same thing that active yeast does in that sense, but maybe not. So I'm going to check the internet real quick before I proceed. Alright, so the internet said that you just have to multiply 1.25 to get how much active yeast you need to replace instant yeast. So if the recipe called for 1 teaspoon of instant yeast, then it would be 1.25 teaspoon of active yeast. So I'm gonna go on that assumption. I'm gonna put it directly into the dry because that's what we should have done. 15 ounces of all-purpose flour. Alright, so we have combined it just until the dry bits are completely not dry anymore and a shaggy dough forms. So now this is going to prove for 12 to 18 hours at room temperature. It needs to be covered to promote the the rise to do well. So I'm going to cover it with cling wrap, and I'm just going to leave it here in the kitchen. Alright, I wrote a note for myself so I would remember 5 p.m. is when we started. We'll be turning it out at 11 the next day, letting it rise for a bit more, and then baking it. Alright, it is now 9:30 in the morning the next day, and I did end up putting it in the oven, not turned on or anything like that, just to give it a little space to grow on its own, keep the temperature more even. So let's see how it is. Ooh, yeah, it is a lot bigger. That's awesome. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave this on the counter here, and I'm gonna prep my workstation for the next steps, and then when I'm done with that, I'll be ready to turn this out. Okay, it is about 10 o'clock, and I'm gonna go ahead and take a peek at this. Ooh, super bubbly. Definitely very yeasty, and it is grown. Okay. Now I don't know if we ought to flip it in there or keep it this facing up, because it'll be reverse when we pull it out. I think I'm going to leave it like this because I want the seam continuing to face down, I think. I don't know how I'm going to do this. Very gently. Ooh. Kind of rectangular shaped inside of a round shape, so I really don't know how that's going to help, but we'll see. I think I'll just pull it a little bit to make it slightly rounder versus rectangular maybe. Now I'm going to leave this to proof for 2 hours. I'm going to put the grisette in there to warm from cold. So I was worried at first about the knob on the top being not being able to withstand the temperature, but I checked on the website and it said it could get up to 450 and be fine. So I'm gonna leave this in here to preheat. We're gonna set the timer for another hour. And then at that point, the oven should be preheated, the liquid set should be nice and hot, and then we can turn this one out onto parchment, and maybe if we're feeling inventive, do some slashes on top, and then transfer it into the hot liquid set. That is the plan. Hopefully it worked. Yeah, kind of. Okay. Still kind of flat. I don't know if that's bad or if it'll like rise in the oven. Let's put some more flour on this. I have one of Robert's razors, so I'm gonna try using this to cut. I'm actually kind of scared, but we'll see. Okay. How should we shape it? Let's go with, I don't know, I've never done this before, so let's try a leaf or something. Is this gonna cut? Kind of. Oh yeah. Do kind of. Okay, I'll do another leaf. Now for the hard part, transferring to the oven. Okay. I need both hands for this, and I need to move this camera. This is gonna be hot. I'm gonna leave that for a second. Okay. No, I'm gonna take it off. Oh, it's hot. I don't know if this is big enough. The bread is kind of getting squished inside. Oh my gosh, you're not going to see any of those cuts at all. I gravely miscalculated. That's fine. we'll see how that goes. Oh my gosh. I need a bigger cast iron. Or not cast iron. Dutch oven. Okay. Leave it in there. It's at, well, it's now dropped from 450, but it'll get back up to 450 hopefully. The lid isn't on super tight, but I don't think I can get any tighter with the paper like that. Maybe I can. Probably not. I'm not gonna touch it. I'm gonna leave it. Okay, so we're gonna do this for 25 minutes. Yeah. Alright, the timer's just gone off at 25 minutes, so I'm going to pull this out and uncover it and then put it back in for 25. The paper is all... Huh? Okay. Let's see what it looks like. Whoa! It totally got bigger! That's awesome. It rose all the way up to like the top. I'm surprised. Okay, putting it back in. Okay, it's been the last 25 minutes. I'm gonna take out the pan. Ooh. Looks good so far, very crusty. The paper is really brown. You can see along the edge here, it's just shaped right up to the paper, yeah, right there. So it'll probably be weird looking around the edges. But it smells pretty crusty and looks pretty crusty, and it sort of retains some of the shape, so. That's a good sound. Okay, it's been cooling for a bit, so let's go ahead and cut it open. Let's see here. Let's do this. Ooh, it's a good sound. Okay, now the test. Does it have bubbles? Does it have bubbles? Well, it does have some. They're not huge, but it's not bad. I think I knocked out a lot of the air when I flipped it in the banneton. So if there's some way to like get that air to stay in there, I bet I could get more bubbles in there. That's awesome though. It's very springy. Seems nice. Awesome. Overall, I think I'd call this a success. It's pretty good, better than I expected it to turn out, to be honest. I think I am going to try the longer ferment and see if that makes a difference. I may also shape it and let it rise in the not hot Dutch oven. The downside of that is that you are not as likely to get that nice hot quick rise with like the crackling, but it would also conform to the shape better. I might also see if I have another vessel that would be able to hold the bread. But for now, I think this is a pretty decent try. It looks pretty good. So we're gonna try it out, see how it tastes. I like mine with butter and jam, so I'm gonna go grab that. See you later.